late at night and I can't sleep because these ideas are stuck in my brain, won't go away. If I don't get them out now, I'll be dealing with them tomorrow instead of working. So, as a mathematician, I was trying to go back to the very beginning to really understand math. And before we had math at all, and before there was even we, there was like pre-we, humanoids and such. Maybe ancient relatives or cousins, or maybe humanoids that had multiple arms that popped in and out of existence and we didn't even know they ever existed because they didn't leave a fossil record. But they had to deal with the same problems that we do and the problems that we use math to deal with. But one thing about us, though, probably a lot of other primates and mammals, we have these fingers right there at the end of our arms, and we can also hold them up and put them right in front of our face or reach out and show somebody else, hey, look at my fingers, right? Cool. So without numbers and without the ability to count, let's say I'm a humanoid and I have, I don't know, a bunch of kids. Great, here's my little kids. Beep, 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 beep. It's just like, could be anything. And here is dad or mom or whatever. And he needs to buy meals. I don't know. I'm not being creative here. Let's say ancient, what do they use in business class? Not wizards or lizards. Gizmos? Widgets. All right, there's a bunch of kids, and the kids are bored. He needs to send the eldest to town to get the kids widgets. But there's no such thing as numbers. So as long as he has, less than this many, that's a hand, by the way. As long as he has less than this many kids, he can just hold up a hand. He says, hey, eldest, go to town and buy, let's see, this many widgets. So this guy goes to town, the eldest, and he goes to the widget dealer, and he shows him, I need this many widgets. So he gives him a widget, he puts his finger down, gives him a widget, puts his finger down. Okay, that works great, for any kind of task. Trying to feed the animals, whatever. But then you get to the problem of, what if you're trying to do something and it involves more than you have fingers? And say, you might have a friend and you're going to tell him to go do something, or her, and they might have fingers, but if they're going to go do it, you're kind of restricted to just what we call 10 fingers. I like to use this for 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Of course, they didn't do that. If you had 10 fingers, you just use your fingers. Like little kids show, I'm this many old, right? Okay. So, there was something that was more, the typical thing I hear all the time is pebbles. Let's grab pebbles. Pebbles, pebbles, pebbles. Right? Because they're conveniently laying around everywhere. Yeah. So, for millions of years, we used pebbles, or if there weren't any of those, sticks or leaves or whatever. And, if I wanted to buy my cows some tacos, 1 taco per cow, I'd go out to my field, I'd look at a cow, I'd pick up a pebble or a leaf or whatever, look at the next one, pick up another one, look at the next cow, pick up another one, until I had pebbles, the same number of pebbles as I have cows anyways. And then I tell my assistant, hey, yo, go to town, give him my bag of pebbles, buy that many tacos, bring them back. That's how it was done for millions of years. And I think that's something that's hardwired into our brain evolutionarily. I have a hunch that it might be why we think money has value. I mean, it's absolutely worthless. I used to think, obviously we don't trust one another That's why we have all these laws to protect us from one another, you know. And then they say money is the root of all evil. Really, it's the love of money. But anyhow, I used to think when I was younger, like, no, money having value is like shows how much we truly do trust one another, because it's all in this trust that this thing has any value at all. But no, I think it's literally hardwired into our brains from this for millions of years. This representation of things, like there's no conscious decision to trust anything. It's just hardwired into us to go, it has value. It's the same as the cow, because for millions of years, that's how we had to do things. There's no other convenient way to accomplish these basic tasks. Okay, great. Well, you know, pebbles aren't everywhere. Okay, so what if you're somewhere there's no pebbles because everything is just wet clay? Ew. Well, you could make little clay balls, but then they might stick to one another. So maybe you grab a big clay ball and then just flatten it, and then you stick your finger in it. Cool. I'll just stick my finger and make a divot for each of my cows or whatever, and then I'll give that to my assistant. Okay, that might work, but I don't know. These divots aren't all that great. Really, it's kind of a exaggeration of mathematically a point. And you know what? An infinite number of points makes what we call a line. And maybe you don't want to stick your finger in there, and you just want to use a stick. And you just stick the stick in. Okay, well, if you accidentally drag the stick, you kind of get a line, right? And then I think, well, actually, these little holes might fill in because it's wet clay as the assistant takes it to town. So maybe this is actually withstands the journey, to town to get the tacos, whatever. Okay, and it's just as easy as just sticking the stick in. We'll stick it in and drag it. Cool. And thus we have our little tally marks. Cool. That's awesome. Well, now these pebbles, though, once we were done with it, you just threw the pebbles on the ground, right? Now, the clay, sure, you do your business, and then you still have this left over. What you could do is just wad it up into a ball, keep it moist, and next time you need to do the task of tallying, you have your ball of clay, you smash it out flat, boop, boop, and you do it again. Cool. But how would you keep it moist? You're always pouring water on it or something from your drinking bottle. Eventually, it just might happen to dry out, bip, 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 and then it's a hard, piece of rock with this record in it. And that probably happened randomly enough where people just thought, hey, it's going to stay there anyways. Maybe I'll connect a memory to this, and I might draw a picture of like, this is the day the cow had 3 legs or whatever. And it's like basically the beginning of writing in a way. I'm sure there was other attempts to have memories put down, but we didn't have paper. And we do know that clay tablets are some of the mediums that exist today that we found. There's probably plenty of others, but there's no record. But anyhow, you got these clay tablets. Cool. Yay. 1, 2, 3, 4, what we call 5. They didn't have names for these. It was just this many, right? I mean, I'm sure eventually they came up with names, but different places had different names. You go to a town, whatever. But one problem is this looks a whole lot like that. You know what I mean? Now again, you don't necessarily resort to this, remember, unless it's more than fingers, right? If you just have fingers, you say this many. So if you're using this to send messages about less than 10, this many on 2 hands, 2 fistfuls of fingers, then you're probably using it because you want to keep a record of the event. Otherwise, why bother? Just hold up your fingers, this many, go. So the problem is those look a lot alike, and it makes things hard to do. You have to stop and really look and squint. My human eyes can't distinguish. And we probably took a hint from our fingers. Like, if you look at your hand, it's like, we're used to this, you know? It's like, hey, all right, but you know what? This thumb here can also fold over. Cool. So if you just look at it, your hand, you may be like, well, if this is 4, and since most of the time we do 5 with our hand, you know, unless we're trying to draw it for posterity, I'm just going to put the thumb like this instead of over here. Okay, makes sense. So, great. Here's your quantity for a handful of fingers. And you do that a lot, and then you realize, well, you know what, this is tedious. I only put this here after I put these 4, so why bother putting those? I'll just do this and assume the others are present. I don't even have to draw them. Sweet, that saves me so much time, so much time, so much time. But then I'm trying to save time, and I'm like 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. And then it's like, but wait a minute. It's important to record it for posterity, otherwise you just hold your hand up. And you're like, is that a 1 or 5? Uh-oh. And it's important. That's why I didn't use my finger. I put it in the clay. I better find a new method to record these events. How can I disambiguate? Well, if diagonal means, 5, but I don't know if that's a diagonal or a 1, how about the simplest thing in the world? What's the simplest, least creative, quickest, easiest way to deal with this problem? Diagonal means 5, but I can't tell if it's diagonal. Just add another diagonal. Double diagonal. It's really just 1, but I'm putting a second one. It's the least creative thing you can do. 1 of something, 2 of something. Okay, that'll be my 5. That's the Roman numeral 5. Now, I don't know if this is a new idea. I'm sure, it's not, because either they invented it many times over, but I asked the AI, because I don't have time to do real research, and they're like, oh yeah, they say that the 5 came from the hand, which is, of course, because duh. And they're like, see, it's a V, a thumb, and your index finger. Well, yeah, if I show you my hand and I, put my dominant fingers out and it forms a V, you're like, yeah, well, of course. But I don't think that's how it happened, right? I think it's evolved this way, where it was literally, there's an intermediate step. They didn't just go from 4 and then go, that sucks, hand. I think it went this intermediate step where they got the hunch from the thumb, and then they dropped the 4, and then this step here, mistaking this for, couldn't tell if it's a 1 or a 5. Because the way creativity happens in the world and the way it sticks, just jumping straight to hand is too much of a leap. There's a problem at hand, and we are super lazy. So that was, I think, the cognitive development. Now, sure, some people might have thought straight to hand for some reason, all right? But ideas evolve just a lot like genetics, I think, because this was a problem that arose many, many, many times, and the solution that stuck around that we all remember is a solution that manifested itself many times independently all around the world. Okay? So it has to be very obvious. A jump like this to hand, straight from this, is more like a fad today. The fads don't stick around, it's just too much of a creative leap. But I think something like this being ambiguous to going to this, because that is the simplest leap from diagonal is 5, but I can't tell if it's a diagonal. The least creative jump is this. And I think probably independently might have arisen in minds many, many times. And those are the kind of ideas that stick around, the ones that we remember, the ones that keep manifesting themselves, the ones that the universe, which is infinite in all directions, is literally pushing into us and through us. You know, here's our brain, information flows in, it generates ideas, rewires the brain, and this is happening over and over and over and over again. Something that can't be helped. Because if you take too much of a leap, people are like, oh, that's so cool. They take it and then they forget about it. And they forget about it. Any idea that's too far ahead, it gets forgotten. The ideas that will stick and persevere are the ones that keep popping up over and over and over again and just won't go away. And that's why I think it's not just because it looks like a V with your thumb and your index finger. I think that intermediate step was there. So that's one idea I had. And I say I had. Mine. You know, it's this information flowing into me. Thoughts pop out. They don't feel like mine, like I did it. But I do know that they won't go away until I get them out. And I like this interface because now, if I suspect that the universe forced me to have an idea that might be useful to humanity, it normally weighs on me, like on my head, breaks my back, because I don't know what to do with it. It's like a gift for humanity, but they stuck me with it, and so now I could just put it into YouTube, and there's a non-zero chance that somebody else will hear it, and then boom, now it's the world's problem, not mine. Yay! All right, so 2 ideas there, I guess. You know, the reason why we trust money isn't because we trust anything. It's from this artificial representation hardwired into us over the millions of years. And that little leap to get to 5. Of course, once you have 5, twice 5 is 10. Just double the V, you know. So other ideas I have that won't go away, I have to get them out so I can do my real work tomorrow, the really boring, mundane stuff like reading emails and such. So yeah, here's 1 and 2, 3. These symbols we should not give people so soon. I know we're in a super duper hurry to get them doing math and calculating, but we don't need people to calculate anymore. We have calculators, right? We need them to develop creative capacity. And how do we do that? Well, we just let them. Our brain wants to do it anyways. So before we give kiddos these symbols, let them do this. I mean, before they're writing, because they don't have the hand dexterity and finger, suave, they're just moving little objects around, okay? And they still can't write and for some reason we call this plus. Get rid of plus, y'all. It's just an archaic word for and. Just say and. Let them do arithmetic with this. When we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When we say 8 and 3, well, that's more than you have fingers, right? Total on their hands. So that's a problem. And of course, we're trying to get them here. Okay? But give them the 8 and the 3. Say and. Well, that's what it is right there. So what is it? Well, as a mathematician, that's the answer. Okay? But what do we say? What is this equal to? When we say 8 and 3, what is this equal to? What are we even asking? This represents a known quantity. This represents a known quantity. This is the answer. Right? So what we're really trying to do is get them to do this kind of stuff. Ew. This is even too much of a leap. Let's go back. If I did this, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. That's what that is. This means that. This means that. And just means, okay, all of them. So when I say add these, what am I asking you to even do? What I'm asking you to do is remember how many fingers that symbol's worth. Remember how many fingers that symbol is worth. And then I want you to remember the symbol that is worth this many and write it down. Well, that's just translating notation. We didn't always have these symbols. Hopefully someday we'll have better symbols that are more useful. But if we keep forcing this onto every single citizen and not letting them be creative, we might be stuck with these symbols forever instead of them evolving into something more useful. Now, sure, don't give them these yet. Let them play with this. The calculators do all that. Let them play with this. Well, if I said, hey, here's some, what can you do with that? Well, what could they do with it? Okay. Well, the way we do it, wait, hold on. Let's see. 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. All right. That's what this is. And what does that mean? Well, 11 is secret code, really, because it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. 11, how the heck do you get 11? Well, there's an operator. There's a machine or function or whatever you want to call it. And we are plugging in 2 of these symbols because we have 10 of them because we have 10 fingers. That's the input. And there's an operation which we don't even have a symbol for. And the output is a human's worth of fingers and another finger. So there's really a hidden plus sign here. Don't forget that. Okay? That's what makes arithmetic hard. When you're trying to multiply, like this number and this number, there's really hidden plus signs, so you're mixing operators. But, I mean, we're humans, and so we want to basically put them in piles that are familiar to us, that we can easily discern. Right? But I don't know. Sure, I can look at my hands and see 10, because I know 5 and 5. But if I had, I don't know how many that is, because it's not my hands. Yes, there's one for each of my fingers, but I can't tell that that's 10 or 9 or 11. I can't tell, right? So I don't like this. This sucks. Okay? Let the kiddos play with it. Base 10, we only use it because we have 10 fingers. So what? You know? They might choose to arrange it and it might be like, okay, here's a couple of them, and here's a couple more, and then, and then I'll put these 2 over here, and I'll put some over here, and then, I'll put some here, and there's one left over. So what do I have? Well, which one of these ain't like the other? Oh, there's not that one. That one doesn't have a partner, so yeah, I'll just play with them some more, like I would in art class, play with crayons, or paint, or clay, or whatever. Let them play with the ideas and the representations. Okay? So, here's another one. Here's the 10 and the 2. We would call that one 12, but if I did this instead, boop, wait. All right, now it's 11 and 1. That's what 11 and 1 is. All right? Here is 12. All right? That's all that is. All I did was move a little tally over, and that's what it represents. The 10 and the 2. Okay, well, this is really arbitrary. And math is the language of the universe, and we're part of the universe, and it's hardwired into us. And sure, hands are part of us, but we're part of the universe, and the universe does not care how many fingers we have. And insisting on doing things this way just makes the math hard for us. Sure, it makes it easy for us if we were like proto-human or children, but after that, base 10 is not the way to go. You might be like, what is more fundamental than fingers? Well, if I just try to put these in I don't know, you might end up doing like this. I'd be like, oh, look at this number. I got, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the same as those because I put those there, and I put those there, and I put those there, and I put those there. Oh, look, samesies. I like samesies. So now instead of this many, I could be like, I have this many of these other things. I'm going to call them these. Right? Or I could call them, I have this many of these things, boxes of 3, right? And I'd rather deal with that many, because I have that many fingers on one hand, than this many. And, well, you know what? Why would I want to deal with that many if I could just do this? Look at that. This is the same thing as, sure. Those are the same thing. And look, those are the same thing. Yay. Okay. So I have a box of 3. I had 4 boxes of 3, right? 4 boxes of 3 is what we call it. But how would I come up with notation for this? This is a different way of just, making the amount smaller. Now it's down to 2. 2 samesies. Okay? 2 samesies. So what do I have now? I have a box. Okay, I got a box. We would do this. You and I, these days, we use that for multiplication maybe. I have a box of 2 boxes. 1 box of 2 boxes. So I would have 2 thingies. Okay. Now, of course, each of these 2 boxes has 2 boxes. And, well, okay, each of the 2 boxes, and the 2 boxes, each box has 3 things, right? And, this is how you could see 2 times 2 is 4 times 3 is 12. This is what we call 12. This sucks. I like this way better. They might discover the fundamental theorem of arithmetic on their own, because this is way better way to represent numbers than that. That just makes everything hard, because that's the whole reason all these kiddos go 12 years of math classes and they can't even add fractions, because we never told them the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. But we taught them arithmetic. I mean, if you're going to have them memorize stuff and do calculations, at least teach them right. This guy, and you have all these huge vocabulary words. Don't just tell them it's like that's human piles of fingers, and the universe doesn't care about that. Give them that. Tell them, get rid of that hidden plus sign, because that's what that really is. I have a human and another hand. I got 2 humans worth of fingers and another finger. This is super complicated, and we're just sweeping all that under the rug. But it's there. It's awful. Get rid of that. Like, you do it like this, apples and oranges. Well, you don't need to make a lists of these things and their multiples or cross. You just this one doesn't have that, and this one doesn't have that. So we'll multiply by 1. Give him what he needs. He's like, I don't have that. Okay. And over here, he doesn't have that. Okay. And of course, this is 1. And kids know you can multiply by 1. And it doesn't change anything. This is the oldest math trick in the book. That's how you're supposed to add fractions. That's the easiest, most direct way to do it. And it's easy if you know what the symbols mean. But when we give them these symbols too soon, we go memorize, memorize, memorize. They never get to embrace the meanings of the symbols. Sure, they'll memorize it and they know it, and then they basically forget it because they're lost in doing multiples of 15 over and doing all these repetitive tasks. You just totally forget about the meaning. But if you weren't given these until you truly appreciated their power, because these were tedious, and you really should only give them these once they have invented their own notation. Let them invent their own notation to make these repetitive tasks quicker. That's a light bulb. Once they take the initiative to come up with their own notation to represent these quantities, and then find a rule to combine their symbols to represent all the quantities, then you can give them these. Show them, well, this is the ones that we use today. We like yours. Are your symbols better than ours? Is your rule better than ours? Who knows? Maybe a child will blow all our minds and come up with a way of doing it that's better. You never know. But in which case, they will be able to think creatively and do problem solving. And it's got to be more fun than just memorizing random symbols. It's so incredibly dull and just torturous. You know what we do historically when we have to memorize random sequences of symbols and regurgitate them? We either write them down or we have the machine store them. Even if the computer's not computing, if we have a whole bunch of symbols that need stored, we have the computer do it. And translating, all we're doing is translating between notations. We're not doing math. We don't teach them math. These are just notations. You're like, hey, check this out. I got this guy. Cool. And well, I don't like to repeat myself, so I invented my own notation. So I say this. That's awesome. But once upon a time there was cubes and stuff. If the volume was 8, we didn't like to say the length of the side of the thing. That was just way too much to write, so we just called it root. If the root, so we could use that old symbol and be like, no, there you go. Okay, and then later on, we're like, before we even had exponents, we had log. Okay, these are all just 3 different ways of saying the same thing. A cube with the side length 2 has volume 8. Even if you're not even talking about a real cube, you're just talking about 2 boxes. Let's see, 2 boxes of 2. All right, and each of those boxes has 2. Boop 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 boop. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's what they really mean by that. And then they'll realize that this is not the same as this, and they'll question, what does is mean? And if they think about just truly what do we mean by is, 2 groups of 3 versus 3 groups of 2 are not the same thing. But if they're dealing with these and know they're different, and then you say equals, and then they truly question what that is and the meaning and the context, then they won't keep writing a bunch of math down, pages and pages of it, where they don't put an equal sign anywhere on the paper. This is the verb in the sentence. Imagine writing a whole essay and there's not a verb. There's clearly a disconnect. And this is after 12 years of math classes. 12 years of math classes. And they don't realize that sentences have verbs. They clearly have learned nothing, because right after you get these symbols, it's pretty much that one. They give you that and then this. So 10, 11, it's the 12th symbol we learn, and they have no idea what it means. This is a dismal, dismal, dismal failure. Okay? So let them play like we do in art class, grade their creative endeavors. Grade how creatively they tried to relate to the idea that you pose. Function and function notation. It's like the first day of class on pre-algebra and then algebra and then pre-cal. It's the same thing. It's like something comes out and it's only one thing. Great. That's it. Maybe it's like, well, what? Think about function, the word. What functions? Machines have a function. We build a machine to make a function. I can imagine a human trying to do something. He has to do this thing, and then it's the same thing over and over and over. It's like, oh, this sucks. And it's hard to do is build a machine to do that. That's really hard to do. But if you have to do this over and over again, the universe is not going to let you just not be compelled to try to build a machine to do that. It's going to force your brain to think about it. Anytime you're not doing this, or even while you're doing it, you're going to be thinking about, how can I not do this? I hate doing this. How can I not do this? I hate doing this. How can I not do this? And it's finally you're done with it. You're like, I have an idea. I'm going to try it out. So tomorrow maybe I don't have to do this. That's how machines are invented. That's how the creativity evolves incrementally, step by step, as your neurons rewire slowly, because every thought is causing a physical change, right? Eventually, your neurons get rewired to have the logical structure. There's a physical structure that's logically equivalent to the logic of the idea of this machine. And then boom, now you can understand this machine. But you can't just pop it into existence like hand. No, that's not how it happens. The wiring occurs incrementally until there's the logical structure physically present that's equivalent to the logical structure of the idea. And then boom. And it's hard enough to make a machine that has one function, right? It does one thing. That's why I think of why we called, mappings or relationships functions if there's one thing out. Because it's hard enough to get one thing out of a machine. Nowadays we have sewing machines and coffee makers. And it's one and the same. Yeah, but for starters, we're lucky to get things to do one thing. So that's how I think about function now. It has one function. The vending machine gives you one thing. If you want two things, put two amounts of money in. Okay, I'm tired. Anyhow, I don't know if anybody in the whole world will ever see or hear this, but it doesn't matter because I did my best to share these ideas. And whether they're of any value or not, I'm hoping maybe it might just stimulate other people's minds into just thinking creatively. It doesn't matter if any of the ideas are actually useful or not. The real idea here is feel free to be. And like Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. If you're not thinking, you're basically a computer. Computers aren't ams, okay? And one thing I noticed is feeling free to be. That's when maximum am rolls. That's when you're most alive and your thoughts are the most unique and precious and valuable. And that's when we feel the best. Feel free to fail. Well, we don't need to judge it. If you're not learning something new, people will judge you as failing all the time because you haven't ever done that before. So if you're not failing, you're not growing and you're not living. If you already know how to do something, it's trivial. It's done. All you have to do is move your arms and legs until it's done. The hard part is thinking about how to do it. That's the really hard part. And part of that is trying to finish this process as you try to do it and you get some information back. And when you try to do it and you so-called fail, no, you didn't fail. What you're doing is probing the system to get the information because you're continuing to think. You're still in the thinking process and you try again because that's part of thinking, getting information. And then eventually, boop, you believe because you're confident that you know how to do it. And then you go try again. And then whenever it happens, check, the way you wanted it to. Now you're very confident that you now know something. And at that point, you can feel more free to stop thinking about that. Because now you know. And then you start thinking about something else or improving upon that, etc. So, please, folks, think. Feel free to think. When someone asks you a question, don't just immediately go, well, I don't know. I don't know. Nobody cares. I don't care what you know. The machines know everything, and they can't think. The one thing that you can do is think. So if I'm speaking to you, this is what I expect. I don't expect you to know anything. How could I trust anything you know? Our minds are full of false memories all the time. We're terrible at knowing. And we can be great, just insanely, amazingly great at thinking. And the only thing that's required is to feel free to be. That's all it takes. But under the pressure in math classes and pressure of life and pressure in all these assumptions and our realities that are so skewed and bizarre, we have no clue that they're that way. It's just a whole bunch of assumptions, presumptions. This is so hard to do for many, many, many of us in so many situations. And making these videos kind of is one of the few things that kind of helps me get closer to this zone. Now that I've shared all that, I don't feel like I have to share it ever again. And now I can go to sleep. All right, good night, everybody. Boop. Yeah, Valentine's Day is coming up. Hope y'all have a wonderful one.